Shalom, Kahala Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai, B'Hashem Kokodash, which is ancient Hebrew for all praises to God in the name of the Messiah, in the name of the Holy Spirit. Double honors to my teachers, the apostles and elders of the great millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect, who are the house of David reborn again in this generation. And shalom to the 130 Yasharallah, who today are known as the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. Before losing our true heritage, we were known as, and still are, the true Hebrew Israelites of the Holy Bible. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about prophecy ramping up, which is fitting with this year's key phrase, which is the year of turning up, right? Now, the thing is if you've been watching the news, you know that the war that's taking place right now between Russia and Ukraine, it's not dying down. It's only intensifying more and more, right? But before we get into some of the latest details about this war, which will eventually lead to the World War III prophesied in the Bible, let's read this. This is Joel 3:9. Proclaim ye this amongst the Gentiles. Prepare war. Wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up. And this is ultimately referring to the 17 nations in the world, right? The Gentiles, the people who you currently see building up their armies and sending supplies. Right now, it's really just money and supplies to Ukraine, but pretty soon you're going to start seeing that supplies and money turn into people and vehicles, right? And because what's happening? Well, the Lord is preparing a great war to come. This is the prophecy that we are soon to come across, right? This is why everything, no matter what is being spoken about, no matter what is being discussed by these elites, right? All these leaders of these nations, there's nothing but division and anything but constructive decision making, man. Everything is basically falling apart. You know, right? You have nations puffing up against each other, namely America puffing up against the Eastern powers, right? You also got a war brewing up in other parts of the world, right? In the South Chinese Sea, the war brewing up between Israel and Iran, North Korea and America, India and China, and so on and so on. But right now we're going to talk about the war taking place over in Ukraine, right? So recently, you probably noticed your gas has been going up, right? Now, yes, ultimately a lot of that has to do with price gouging, right? Because ultimately these gas station vendors set, for the most part, the prices, right? And it's been shown that these gas stations have basically been jumping the gun and been charging more than what they should be, right? At least more than what the market is requesting, right? Because the price of a barrel of oil hasn't jumped as much as to justify the increase in prices, namely here in California, right? Now, that being said, why is our gas going up? Well, look no further than this headline, right? It says Zelensky's powerful address to the EU today that led to ban on Russian oil. So you see, if you've been watching or if you've looked up the oil tankers and their traffic, you'll now notice that the oil tankers that used to come from Russia to Europe have stopped. And ultimately, there's now oil tankers coming from America to Europe, right? This has happened when Biden pledged support for Europe in regards to providing them with oil, right? Providing them with energy, since Russia's oil was cut off, right? So this is why you have all these gas stations over here upping the price, because they know that a barrel of gas will eventually go up, right? So I said all that to say this. Right now you're seeing Europe going through just the beginning of shortages, which is what's going to soon follow here in Babylon the Great, which is what America is referred to in the Bible. Next, let's read this. It says, no restrictions. NATO to take more aggressive stance against Russia, right? So NATO, right, which biblically is referred to as the beast, right? NATO is the North Atlantic Trade Organization, which ultimately they were set up after World War II to come up against Russia, right? In case Russia decided to stand up as a great power and take over, right? Pick up basically where the German Nazis left off. But well, NATO is ultimately America, backed up by some European countries. But again, as you've seen here, NATO's taking the gloves off, right? And they're basically coming up against Russia with even more strict, sanctions and policies. So much so that NATO came out later and said, NATO is no longer bound by commitments to Russia and will beef up Eastern Europe presence, says Deputy Secretary General. So you see, so not only are the westernized Edomite power rising up against the Eastern Edomite power, but you also seen a betrayal, right? A betrayal of the NATO organization to the commitments that it made to Russia, right? This is just another telltale sign that these are the Edomites of the Bible, right? This is what these Edomites do, right? Just ask the tribe of Gad, which you would refer to as the Native Americans, right? Edom didn't keep one treaty with the Native Americans. I think it was over like 250 treaties that were made and broken by these Edomites. So again, this is right up their alley, right? So you're seeing here is basically just war. The stance against each other is just starting to rise and higher and higher, right? Which is ultimately going to lead to that World War III. This is Ezekiel 38:4. And I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth, and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. And that's exactly what's going on right now, man. The Lord right now is changing the events of the world so that way Russia is forced to take a more aggressive stance and to bring even more of its army to the border, which ultimately is going to lead them right down there to the Middle East, the Valley of Jehoshaphat, right outside of Israel. Right, that's ultimately where all this military power that's being built up right now is heading. Right, this is just recently what happened. Some of the more recent stuff that's going on over there in Ukraine. It says the U.S. agreed to send medium-range HIMARS rockets to Ukraine on the condition that they were not used to strike over the Russian border. So you see, ultimately what's happened is you got to understand, man, Ukraine, it's like a hollow country, man, when it comes to defense. They have no air power. Their ground forces are, for the most part, decimated, and they're pretty much fighting a guerrilla a war against Russia, right? Taking out troops here and there, pretty much just like the what was it called? Those, like the Afghanistan did to Russia. And they're doing this with the help of the NATO countries, Poland and America, England, Japan, and all these countries who are assisting Ukraine to fight against Russia. Now, what that has done, right, it has put weapons into the Ukrainian unqualified arms, right? Because there's lots of people in Ukraine, which they had just been talking about how Ukrainian soldiers are simply leaving the battlefield. They're just leaving because they're getting tired of it, right? Because remember, this started off in 2001, right? And people are done with this war, right? Namely, these soldiers, these people who have been losing, friends, family members, right? Their will to live. The thing is this war is drawing on everybody, and ultimately, the truth of the matter is, Akim, is that this war is a setup, right? Even though, yes, there are people dying, even though there are real life consequences taking place right now, This has all been planned out, right? You just read Albert Pike's letter to Giuseppe Mazzini back in the 1800s, talking about how they the so-called Illuminati, right, basically the kings of Edom, have put together a plan to initiate a world takeover, which would consummate with the bringing forth of 3 world wars, right? And what we're seeing right now is the orchestration, or I'm sorry, the organization of that 3rd World War, right? There's going to be a reason for all the nations to go to war. There's going to be a reason why Russia is being, brought up, or the reason why Russia is going to take a more aggressive stance, and this is it right here. Like I said, you have all these countries, in this case, the U.S., saying, or basically giving to Ukraine these medium-range missiles. Basically now, Ukraine can not only defend inside of its country, but now it can actually shoot into Russia. And Russia, what does Putin say? It says, Putin vows to hit new targets if West sends weapons to Ukraine. Russia will expand the list of targets it will attack in Ukraine if Western countries send them long-range weapons, President Vladimir Putin says. And ultimately what they're talking about is if they send them these medium-range missiles, what Russia will do is basically continue to invade and push back through the Ukrainian land and basically conquer and take over more, so that way these missiles can no longer shoot within the Russian border, right? So basically Russia has told Ukraine and the world that if you give these guys weapons that can reach us, we're going to basically take more of the land, so that way they cannot reach our homeland, right? But this is already taking place. So much so that, look, Russia, what does it say here? Associated Press says, Russia hits Kiev with missiles. Putin warns West on arms. And this is ultimately what's going on, right? Russia right now is extremely pissed that all these nations are helping Ukraine out, right? Because the thing is they think they're fighting a secret war, right? That Russia doesn't see it, but Russia's making it very clear that it's going to hold not only the Ukrainians responsible, but also all those who provide the Ukraine with weapons. Now, yes, this is horrible for the Ukrainian people, right? But hey, man, a lot of these are Edomites, man, and this is the Lord ultimately bringing judgment to them, right? But that being said, it's still a tragic event, right? And ultimately, the Lord's will is being done. Right? You got to see it in that aspect, okay? Now, next, let's go and see what the Russians have been saying about all the recent things going on, right? Here, on this TV show, it says the Russian One TV special operations is over. World War III began. We are forced to demilitarize not only Ukraine, but all of NATO, right? So now you're starting to see that hook has been sunk into the jaws of Russia, as it said in Ezekiel, right? Now the Lord is not only is he put it into the hearts and minds of these Russians to go after Ukraine, but now to look upon NATO, to look upon the beast.
Признать возможно, что спецоперация России на Украине закончилась, в том смысле, что началась самая настоящая война, причем война Третья мировая, и мы вынуждены заниматься демилитаризацией не просто Украины, а всего Североатлантического альянса.
So even though this is a TV show, the TV over in Russia doesn't work like it does over here. Where over here in America, you got corporate interests that for the most part own these channels. In Russia, pretty much Russia owns the channels over there. So everything that is said on these shows is orchestrated and planned. So what that lady said wasn't just, off the cuff. It was something that was given to her, which is why she was reading. Let's go ahead and look back. This is why she's reading. There you go. See, this is why it's not coming out of her own heart. This is coming out of the script that she was given to read. right, to influence the Russian population, to let them know what is going on, right, that how much of a serious situation this is, that Russia is considering that they are already in World War III. Now, yes, they may be embellishing it a bit, but I doubt that their military is taking it lightly, right? Just as we shouldn't be taking this lightly. And just to show you that Russia is not really just boasting words, it tells you from the Kursk region to the west, the Uragan multiple launch rocket system, the 152 millimeter Gayasent Canyon, Russia is bringing weapons to kill Ukrainians in order to continue to seize Ukraine. Look at this. This is what Russia is shipping into Ukraine. And what I've been hearing in reports is that they're pretty much going to cut Ukraine off from the outside world by taking over all the water ports, which is why you're going to see the Russians basically go down south and basically cut Ukraine off from the sea and all the rivers. So that way things can't be shipped into Ukraine. And also, this is how Russia's going to cut the Ukrainians off by the kneecaps. But this is ultimately going to embolden the NATO nations and ultimately rise them to power and bring even more force on the side of Ukraine. Because again, not only is it a war between Ukraine and Russia, right? But it's ultimately a war against the New World Order establishment and in a rogue element, which is these Russians who are trying to take the lead, right? What I've been saying about this whole situation. Think of it like bank robbers who have agreed to work together to rob a bank. And now that the bank has been robbed and the money has been taken, now you're starting to see the bank robbers starting to fight against each other, right? Trying to kill each other off so that way they can get the spoils. And that's ultimately what's going on. The world has been plundered and it is ripe for the picking. Now ultimately, those who were firmly in power, right? The bankers, the New World Order, elitists that we hear about, right? They now are seeing objections and challenges to their rule coming from Russia, China, right? And all these other BRIC nations, which are increasing their admittance into the BRICS nation, okay? This is Revelations 11 and 14. The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. And this ultimately is talking about the World War IIIs, or the world wars, and this is ultimately talking about the third woe, right, which is coming quickly, right? All these things that you're hearing in the news, people, that they're trying to distract us from, with the Johnny Depp trial, the Texas shootings and all these things, man, all that for the most part is distractions, right? Esau, like it tells you, man, that these enemies would attack us at all of our gates. And this is why everything is being attacked right now, man, from your gender to the food, the air, the water, education, the war, what you're able to buy, sell. Pretty soon it's going to get to the point where it's going to, even the average Joe, which is just simply, these average everyday Americans right now, they're just barely being inconvenienced by having things run out, man. It's going to get to the point where they're going to lose their shit, right? And they're going to ultimately wake up when World War III is about to start, right? When things, when who knows, man, these Gurkha troops may start invading America, because again, that's another prophecy in the Bible that America will be visited, right? It will no longer be that virgin daughter of Babylon, right? It will no longer be untouched, right? It will be, ultimately invaded by these armies that are basically rising up against America right now. This is Ecclesiasticus 5 and 7. Make no tarrying to turn to the Lord, and put not off from day to day. For suddenly shall the wrath of Yahweh Bashem Yashai come forth, and in thy security thou shalt be destroyed and perish in the day of vengeance. Now I know I'm preaching to the choir, and who knows, maybe you may have stumbled across this video, and if that's the case, hey, all welcome, right? But if you're watching this video, you should be sincere in trying to find the truth of the Bible, right? Trying to find the true, God, which is the God of the Holy Bible, right? The Most High, whose Hebrew name is Yahweh, right? This right here makes it very clear that you need to seek Him, right? Because again, what's coming is not something that you're going to be able to save yourself from, right? The calamities are going to not only hit, the over there in the European, stage, but are also going to happen right here in America, right? Are things that you're going to need to have the Lord on your side to survive, to get through, right? All the police shootings, all the increase in violence, all the corruption that's going on, all the looting and stealing, right? Now that inflation has gone up, there's been retail reports just showing that theft has gone, off the charts, and this is ultimately why, more likely, these politician devils decriminalized petty theft, because they knew what was going to be coming, right? And they didn't want to fill their prisons with minor offenders and stuff, man, because they're going to have to save that for the people who they're going to need to throw into the prison while we're going through this shit. Now, this is ultimately why they made this whole pandemic, because the economy's going down, and the great way to cover a collapsed economy by incompetence is to declare an emergency, something like a pandemic, where they can blame the economy crash not on decades of financial mismanagement, but on a plague that they had that nobody had control of. But again, the people who have eyes to see and ears to hear, they know what's really going on. They know that these devils are behind all of this. And though they're trying to hide their hand, the Lord is revealing it to them, revealing it to the world, right? And He's also revealing what's going on in Russia, in Ukraine right now, and showing the world, showing you, Hakim, how this is ultimately going to lead to that third world war. So that being said, if you haven't done so already, repent and find the Lord, right? So until next time, I want to give all honor and glory and praises to Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai, B'Hashem Ruach Kodash, the waters, my teachers, the apostles, and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect. Shalom.